Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
You guys, it's an honor to be with all of you, and I'm excited about what God has in store for all of us tonight. Jesus is amazing. He really is, and I am living proof that all things are possible. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you, and I just thank you, Lord, for tonight. I thank you for what you have in store for each and every one of us. I thank you, Heavenly Father, you're so gracious and so long-suffering and so patient to meet us where we are and where we find ourselves. And Lord, that you're God that comes and you dip down below the clouds and you rescue us and you wrap us with your arms and you just simply allow us to know that our life is significant and of great worth value just in your eyes. And Lord, I thank you, Lord, may you expose our worth and value tonight and our significance as children of God. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, guys, it's an honor to be here. Let me get right into it. November 25th was a Monday. November 24th was a Sunday. I know that's not hard for you to believe. That Sunday comes before Monday. But November 24th, that Sunday, my wife and I decided to sit our family down, our 4 boys and 2 daughter-in-laws, and basically let them know that something was happening. And I didn't know what was going on, but looking back now, 18 months before, when I was doing virtual crusades around the world, I could feel my mind was about to basically freeze. And then all of a sudden it would freeze. And I just let my crusade directors around the world doing virtual crusades assume that the internet just stopped or glitched. But it was actually me not being able to get any words out. It only lasted about 5 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. And I went to places and tried to figure it out. And as it kind of progressed, I had 2 weddings. 2 of our boys got married within about 4 months. The last one 2 weeks before November 25th. And what we began to notice was that I started running into things. I started dropping things. When I tried to play baseball with my boys, just play toss with them, they would be 10 feet away and it would go sideways. And we would laugh, my kids would laugh, we thought I was getting old, and they just can't throw a baseball anymore. When it came to pickleball, I just literally could not, no matter, for the life of me, serve the ball in the court. And my wife began to have to finish my sentences, and she was really good at finishing my sentences already, but she had to do it more and more. And then I started noticing that when I was working with patients and trying to basically write, you couldn't read my writing. You couldn't read it before, but you really, so I have a notepad in my office, and I was just trying to write the alphabet, and I couldn't write the alphabet. And so I knew something wasn't right. November 25th, after we told our family the day before, we went and told my staff. And they were clueless. They had no clue. I was very good at covering it up. I felt like I had a mini stroke. We didn't really know what was happening to me, but we just knew that we were going to take a step back and they needed to take a step forward. And then my brother convinced me, because I'd gone to see him the weekend before and talked to his medical doctor, and he ran some tests, and on that Monday morning I just called him up and I said, hey, this is what's going on, and they said I would go to the emergency room because it's Thanksgiving, let's go to the emergency room. So I went to the emergency room by myself. I was there for about 8 hours. My wife ended up joining me there, and after a CT scan and a brain MRI, the neurosurgeon came in and said, Dr. Pete, you have a glioblastoma. You have a very aggressive form of terminal brain cancer, and we estimate that you have about 12 months to 18 months to live. And we need to do surgery in the morning. I praise God that my wife was in the room, and God's in the details, because my wife says, there's no way I'm letting you open up my husband's brain next to a Walmart. But it's interesting, so God is in the details, because the neurosurgeon who came in to tell me the news said, Dr. Pete, how do I know you? I said, honestly, sir, I don't know. He said, because you've never been a patient at this hospital before. And then I honestly had never been to that hospital before except to pray for people. And he said, you know what? He goes, I know where I know you. He goes, I'm reading your book. In fact, this morning I was reading your book. Someone had said, he was interested in functional medicine and said, you need to read this book. And he said, so I've been reading your book, and this morning I opened up your book and started reading it. And I said, and it opened up the door for me to say, then doctor, where would you go if this was you? And he said, I would not stay here, even though he was a surgeon. He said, I go to MD Anderson. And through the grace of many of you in this room, within a week, I was at MD Anderson. Within 2 weeks, I was in a 7-hour brain surgery. They had me awake for 5 hours because they didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know if I was going to come out of it. And I know this because I work now with people all over the world every single day. I have 7 consults a day, and I'm booked out for a long, long time. And I have a gentleman who has a great size tumor in his head, and he's paralyzed on his whole side of his body. So they told me I'd be in surgery for 5 hours. They told me that afterwards I'd be in the hospital for 10 or 15 days, not knowing if I'd walk or talk, because it was affecting my speech and motor control. There's a 10-inch scar on the left side, so it's affecting the right side of my body. And by the grace of God, I was released from the hospital 48 hours after I came out of recovery. And the doctors were amazed. I truly believe that God touched my life. They gave me hydrocodone. They didn't give me hydrocodone. They gave me basically a whole suitcase of medications to take with me because they were afraid of the pain I was going to have. And so because of that, I took a hydrocodone that night when I got home from the hospital. They made me stay in Houston and went to bed, woke up the next morning and felt great. So I thought, well, they say I'm going to have a lot more pain, so maybe I should take a Tylenol. Took one more Tylenol and haven't had anything in my body since. So I went to MD Anderson does a clinical trial where they do what's called a dendritic cell vaccine. The dendritic cell vaccine is they take the tumor that's extracted, they mix it with your own plasma, and it creates what's called a dendritic cell that will actually go and scavenge the body for any future or any remaining tumor growth or future tumor growth. MD Anderson, it was costing $600,000 out of pocket if you were approved for it, but I had to do chemoradiation to do it. And for me, I just, for whatever reason, I couldn't find peace with chemo and radiation. I'm not against chemo and radiation. What I suggest for everybody, and it's what I've told my patients for years, is that you and your family have to fight this battle. And so you better figure out where you find peace to go fight this battle. I don't believe a doctor should tell you what to do. I believe doctors care about us, they love us. But ultimately, like my wife said, she said, ultimately this is going to be your fight, and you're going to have to fight for your life. And whatever you decide, we will go there and we will fight for you from that position. Most patients that I work with right now, because I work with cancer patients from all over the world, probably I think 50 different countries so far I've already met with people that are dealing with cancer. I tell everybody, find out for your family where you have peace. If that's chemo, if it's radiation, if that's surgery, if it's some other approach, figure out where you have peace, and then I will come and I will fight for you from that position, and we'll fight together. And so for my wife was very, very gracious, and I was blessed to have 2 amazing individuals, a gentleman named Dr. Josh Axe. He's a leading health expert. His wife is my wife's first cousin, so it's convenient. Jordan Rubin is actually one of my best friends. He's been with me around the world. We vacation together as a family, and Jordan Rubin and Dr. Josh Axe stood up and they said, whatever you need, let's go. And to have that support was huge in my life because it can be very daunting. Not having the support system, trying to go after it on your own, trying to figure out this whole thing of cancer specifically is a beast. And God was very, very gracious to us. And so I ended up going to immunosine, like I said, and I did not do chemo radiation. And at the 4-month mark, I was diagnosed on November 25th, and on March 25th, exactly 4 months, I had another MRI, and the oncologist, the medical doctor, and the neurosurgeon looked at my scan and said, we've never seen anything like this before. Not only is there no cancer, but your brain is normal. And they were, from their perspective, I was in remission. I believe that's touched my life. And now I believe that the Lord has opened up a brand new harvest field for me, and that's cancer patients. And he said, I want you to go serve them. I want you to go love them. I want you to go empower them. And I want you to earn the right to share me with the world. And that's exactly what we're doing. On Thanksgiving, so 3 days after I was diagnosed, and I feel like I just speaking louder. Maybe that's good. Good or not? Yes, yes. So is that okay or is that too much? Good. So on Thanksgiving, we made the decision, my wife and I, through discussion and a lot of vulnerabilities, that we were going to invite people into our journey. And on Instagram, we were going to we just said if we're going to go out, we're going to go out swinging, and we're going to inspire as many people as we possibly can. And that's what we've done. And God's been very gracious to us. And it's amazing that people right now, they just don't know where to go. They're just desperate. They have no hope. And they're finding hope, which I thank God for, and being inspired that there is a way that you can approach cancer. For me, and I'm the type that literally likes to dive into the deep end. As 23 years of clinical practice, my objective is never to tell you what to do. I don't tell you to do chemo, don't do chemo, do radiation, don't do radiation, vaccinate, don't vaccinate. I don't believe that's my responsibility. My responsibility is to educate. My responsibility is to figure out for me as all the information I possibly can so I can empower you and give you the tools to make a decision for yourself. And then when you make a decision and when you find a course of action, then I'm going to go there and I'm going to fight for you from that position. That's how I always approach in 23 years of clinical practice. And it's how I feel like God's called me to use that approach even today. But when it comes to cancer, there's a lot of information and there's a lot of ignorance out there. Most oncologists will tell you that diet means nothing. That is the biggest pile of crap I've ever heard in my whole life. If I give you a PET scan, it will fill you with radiographic glucose and it will light that cancer up like a Christmas tree. Because cancer feeds on sugar. So obviously from that reasoning alone, cancer loves sugar. Diet means something. Dr. William Lee I think his name is William Lee, is a Harvard-trained scientist and doctor and researcher. He proves that diet means everything. Absolutely everything. Cancer is metabolic. What does that mean? Okay? How many of you have heard of metabolism before? Okay? What does metabolism mean? Many people assume that metabolism, I have a good metabolism, I have a fast metabolism, I'm skinny. Or I have a slow metabolism, I have a poor metabolism, I'm overweight. Metabolism has nothing to do with how skinny or fat you are. Metabolism is all about your body's ability to take food, which is fuel for energy, convert it through the mitochondria of your cells and produce energy, ATP, and metabolites for life. That process of the body converting fuel or food through your cells, through the mitochondria, and producing life, that whole process is called metabolism. The more efficient that metabolism is, the healthier the individual is. The more dysfunctional metabolism is, the more it affects your what's called mitochondria, the powerhouse of your cell, that creates dysfunction, that creates inflammation, that creates free radicals, that leads to cancer and every chronic illness. So it's imperative that we look underneath the hood. There's a lot of information out there when it comes to diet and everything else. Wisdom rightly applies the information, rightly applies the facts. I can Google all day long, and if you're not careful, you get yourself in trouble Googling stuff. Wisdom rightly applies the information that you bring in. It's imperative to have godly wisdom, to have the mind of Christ and the wisdom of God. It's imperative that if you don't have the wisdom of God, that you find someone that does. That you seek out counsel. Don't just take what the doctor says and call that biblical. There's a lot of godly medical doctors and doctors that are out in this world. But just because they're godly, just because they love the Lord, doesn't mean what they tell you is biblical. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yes. I'm not against doctors. I believe all doctors want what's best for their patients. But most doctors that I know that come to me, most medical doctors and oncologists, have to play ignorant. Because if they don't play ignorant and they lead you in a more natural approach, and you take that natural approach at the expense of doing conventional treatment, and something happens to you, they can be sued for malpractice and lose their license. And your doctor loves you. The doctors that I know are amazing. I have many patients that are medical doctors and oncologists, and that they come to me. But they'll say, Dr. Pete, our hands are tied. In fact, if we don't give people the purple pill, Nexium, the purple pill, because they saw a commercial of the purple pill, and when I took the purple pill, my digestive issues were good and my acid reflux was better. He said, if we don't give them, he goes, we have patients coming into me, many of them say, coming into us asking for the purple pill. They don't know what the purple pill does. They just saw a commercial, and when everyone that took the purple pill did better. They don't know that the purple pill has side effects. They don't know that the purple pill depletes the body of key minerals. They don't know that it does this, and this, and this. And if we don't give them the purple pill, we know they're going to go somewhere else. And we love them. We've been with them forever, so we give them the purple pill. But we know there's side effects with the purple pill. They said, our hands are tied. But when that same oncologist has a family member that gets diagnosed with cancer, guess what? They come to me. And they said, Dr. Pete, what do you want us to do? We will do whatever you tell us. And what I tell them is what the medical research validates, not what my research validates, what the medical research validates. That cancer is metabolic, that cancer is based on mitochondrial dysfunction, that cancer feeds on sugar, that is very adaptable. It also feeds on what's called glutamine and amino acids. And so we can starve cancer. Research, not my research, medical research proves that you can starve cancer. This is, for me, this is life and death. For me, this is unapologetic. For me, this is, hey, I'm all in on this sucker. Like I have a program that you have in front of you that I created for my wife, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, way before I was diagnosed with cancer. Worked for cancer patients that came to me from all over the world. But when rubber met the road and I was diagnosed with terminal cancer, it became, this is it. And I want to know, I want to see my boys and their spouses, I want to cheer them on. I want to see them have grandchildren. I want to cheer them on. I want to spoil them. I want to watch them live out their life, and I want to shepherd them to the best that I know how. And I'm not okay with being done. The doctor told me initially I had 12 to 18 months to live. A doctor that looked at my MRI recently, 2 months ago, a neurosurgeon at MD Anderson, looked at my brain scan and said, Dr. Pete has at most a 1% chance to be alive in 8 months. But God. That's not the report of the Lord. That might be the facts of this world, but I live according to a different reality, and that's the reality of the Word of God and truth, and it trumps the facts of this life. But it doesn't mean I'm not called to be a good steward. It doesn't mean I'm not called to use prudence. What's prudence? Wisdom and practical matters. And many people, unfortunately, are not being prudent in their life. We become very haphazard in our life and the things that we do. Each and every one of us has been given gifts, the Bible says, having gifts differing according to the grace given to you. It says utilize those gifts. Embrace those gifts. Don't be threatened by someone else's gifts. Operate in the gifts that God's given you. How do I operate in the gifts that I've been given? What are some of the gifts I've been given? My relationships are gifts, precious gifts in my life. And my role and my responsibility with the gifts in my life are to steward them and be faithful with them. And when I steward the gifts in my life, it means I honor them. And the things that I honor, I partake in the fruit of those things. When I dishonor them, when I don't steward them, I reap the consequences of them. So if I come home tonight and my bags are packed on the front step and I didn't honor and steward over my relationship with my wife, guess what? It's too late. But I know better. When it comes to my finances, I know that I have to pay my bills. I have to budget. I have to do those things. If I don't and wait for the creditors to come after me, it's too late. I reap the consequences. But when it comes to a person's health, we love to react to things. We love to say, God's my healer. I believe that. I've seen amazing miracles all over the world. I believe I'm a testimony of one of those miracles. but not at the expense of not stewarding over the temple of God. See, for me, there's many years that I didn't steward the temple of God, that I was very careless with what I put in my body, that I didn't pay attention to it, that I was like one that I lived for the next meal. I lived to eat rather than eating to live. See, I can live to eat, not care what I put in my body, and reap the consequences. That's like going to the gas station and no matter, you just put the nastiest fuel in your engine that you could possibly put in, not way worse than 87 grade, right? You just put in the nastiest fuel. Guess what? I can get from here in Texas to Minnesota back and forth many, many times, but at the expense of what? Tons and tons of corrosion. Does that make sense? But if I put a clean fuel in my engine, and I care about what I put in my engine, and I think about what I put in, guess what? It has less and less corrosion, and I can get there. Not only my car is going to last longer. So when I don't pay attention to what I put in my body, it's like putting a nasty fuel in my engine. It's basically saying, I don't care. But it's at the expense of tons and tons of corrosion. But when I begin to pay attention to the fuel I put into my engine, and I pay attention to the food that I put into my engine, it lasts a lot longer. But then how many of you know that if you went to a gas station and they said, hey, would you like to add this additive, right? What's the additive do? It cleans out the previous corrosion in the car engine. That's what antioxidants do. Antioxidants are basically there to mop up the free radicals and the previous corrosion from the foods that we've ate for so long. And so really the rule of thumb, if you want to begin to heal the body at a metabolic level in the mitochondria, we want to put in clean fuel, so clean foods that are best for my body, open up the detoxification pathways of my body, and add tons and tons of antioxidants that mop up the damage that's previously there. And then that's a huge opportunity to steward over the temple of God. No matter how far gone you are, I would rather be at death's door and get moving in the right direction than assuming you're healthy and moving in the wrong direction. That's playing Russian roulette with your life. And that's a dangerous place to be. People say, Dr. Pete, so you mean to tell me without chemo and without radiation, you were cancer-free in 4 months? Yes. By the grace of God. But one of the number one things that I personally did is something that I created for my wife 4 or 5 years ago. My wife approached me and she said, Pete, she goes, I'm not feeling that good. I'm having digestive issues, hormonal imbalances, maybe borderline autoimmune, but I'm just not feeling great. And I was giving her supplements from our supplement company, and she just said, I just feel like there has to be more. And so I reached out to a number of functional medicine practitioners in my life, and that many of you know. But what I found consistently is that most programs did not do blood work. And the ones that did do blood work, they gave everyone the same supplements. And they were great supplements. But if we're not careful, we get overloaded with supplements. And so they were great supplements, but there's no personalization for them. And then there was no meal plan. Especially when you look at all the new research on how diet is really food is medicine, but there's no game plan for that. And so for my wife, she just said, no offense, I want more. And so I started thinking about, okay, what are the tests I want to run for my wife? Number one, if food is medicine, then I want to run a food sensitivity test. Because I want to know, even though my wife was eating gluten-free and dairy-free at the time, I want to see what foods was she eating that were healthy foods, but not healthy for her body. Because it's not a one-size-fits-all. And so I want to know, what are the foods that you're consuming that, and what we found is her body didn't do well with broccoli. Some people don't do well with asparagus. Some people don't do well with apples. Some people don't do well with bananas. We found out from Preston that bananas for him cause a huge inflammatory response, and he was having bananas every single morning. For me, there's some things that I'm sensitive to as well. And so for my wife, we said, okay, we want a food sensitivity test. Number two, we want a DNA test. We want to see if she had any DNA mutations or variations. In fact, there's a gentleman named Gary Brecka who says everyone on the planet should have 2 tests. Everyone, not just cancer patients, every single person on the planet, in his opinion, should do what's called a methyl detox test, which is a DNA test, and a micronutrient analysis to determine cellular deficiency, micronutrient deficiencies at a cellular level. Now, I can go run a blood panel today and find out nutrient deficiencies in the blood. Very valuable information, but completely different from nutrient deficiencies in a cell. The health is based on cellular function. And so I wanted to make sure I knew what is actually going on at the cellular level. I wanted to see if the cell membrane, which is the gate of the cell, is it rigid or is it fluid? Because if it's rigid, it doesn't allow nutrients to get in, and it doesn't allow toxins to get out. I wanted to know what the DNA was because I wanted to make sure there was no variations that was going to affect detoxification and methylation at a cellular level. And then I did a gut test, and then we did what's called a homocysteine test, a measure of inflammation. I took that information, to be very transparent with you, I took that information, I called up my manufacturer for my supplement company, and I said, will you do me a favor? Assuming he was going to do me a favor. Assuming that's all you had to do is call up your manufacturer and say, hey, could you do me a favor? And they were going to say, yes, Dr. Pete, I will gladly do you a favor. And I said, will you take my wife's blood work, put it on your assembly line, and fill it with what she's deficient in? And they said, what? They said, no. They said, we can't do that. One, it doesn't make sense as a business. We would lose money, but no, we can't do that. We're not equipped to do it. So I called everyone and their mother in America, and no one would accommodate. Not one. And I finally found someone in Canada that was willing to take my wife's blood work, not only put it on the assembly line and fill it with what she was deficient in at a cellular level, but also couple her DNA mutations, couple her food sensitivities, and then I was able to measure her 50 antioxidants against her physiology to see which ones her body did best with. We compounded a supplement for my wife, set her up with a brilliant nutritionist, and then we were able to create a meal plan based on her blood work. And it literally transformed her life. So I started allowing my patients that had come to me for the last 20 years from around the world with MS, Parkinson's, heart disease, prostate cancer, breast cancer, leukemia, and so forth, to use this program. And I started getting calls from oncologists. I have a lady, for instance, from Missouri who had cancer 7 years ago. Did the conventional route, chemoradiation, and 7 years later, it came back with a vengeance. And she just said, I would rather die. No offense, I'd rather die than go through that again. And so her oncologist calls me up and says, we sent so-and-so to you 4 months ago. She refused chemoradiation, and she said, we convinced her to redo testing at least because she didn't do the conventional route. And when we went back for testing, we found that every one of her tumors was now hollow, and she was cancer-free. And then I became the patient. And people said, Dr. Pete, how did you get the results you did? I would say unequivocally the best return on my investment other than my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, was I personalized everything. And I basically tweaked a few things and did the test that my wife did. I determined exactly what was good for me. You know what I found? That chicken and beef were not good for my chemistry. But bison was great. Salmon was great. But I'm on a strict keto diet. And I switched over to allulose. And I found that for me, I was very sensitive to allulose. And it was not a good sweetener for me. Stevia I was great with, but monk fruit, I had a mild sensitivity, so I could have it every 4 days. I was able to pinpoint exactly what was good for my body. And then the supplement we created wasn't just, hey, let's throw things at you, because in my protocol, and if you follow me on Instagram, and you type in protocol in any one of the comments, you can get my 84-page document with everything that I've done. But the key to that is the Be Resilient program. So it's the compounded supplements that I've done. I try not to even share that. I try to basically give you everything that I'm doing and try to give you as many free things that I possibly can. But to be just very transparent, the biggest thing I did in my life other than the Lord was what we now have before you is Be Resilient. So Be Resilient was actually not created to provide to people. It wasn't created for me. It was created for my wife because there was a gap in the market. And then it became a huge blessing to my patients. And then it became a lifesaver for me. And so how Be Resilient now works is we basically send a lab kit to your house. We arrange for a mobile phlebotomist to come to your house and draw the blood. We send off that blood work to the lab in about 2 to 3 weeks. When those lab results post, we actually assign a nutritionist to you that will work with you for the entire 8-month program. They will meet with you a number of times. The first time they'll go over all your test results with you. We'll compound a supplement for you. That supplement will arrive from the time you sign up at about 5 to 6 weeks, and then we'll start you off at 1 capsule for 3 days, 2 capsules for another 3 days, up to your serving size. We create a meal plan for you. We have an online portal that we've been working on for the last number of years, way before I had cancer, that has 1,200 hours of material in there that we give you as well. And it's an 8-month program that we believe is life-changing. I don't believe there's any other program like it in the world. But people ask me all the time about, what do you do? That's exactly what I did. My resilience protocol that I give to everyone for free because I believe when it comes to cancer, because cancer is metabolic, because cancer feeds on sugar, because cancer is very adaptable, we want to make sure that we can open up the detoxification pathways. We need to restore fluidity of the cell membrane. We need to make sure that the detoxified organs of the body are doing what they're supposed to. To be honest with you, in all transparency, I don't care about heavy metals or mold or limes. Not that those things are important. But your body was fearfully and wonderfully made. It was bought with a price. It was created to work. I would rather allow your detoxifying organs, which are 5 of them, to just work effectively and support them. What are those detoxifying organs? Your intestines, your kidneys, your liver, your lungs, and your skin. So this is what most people don't realize. If you have a leaky gut, why? Because you don't pay attention to the foods that you put in your body. Why? Because you're deficient in the key minerals for gut health. If your gut is leaky or damaged, that puts extra pressure on your liver and your kidneys. And if they are overwhelmed, it puts extra pressure on your lungs. Lung cancer. COVID. All the people dying from COVID were dying from what's called ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, because the intestines, the kidneys, the liver were so overwhelmed and overloaded that the lungs had to do the brunt of the detoxification, and because of the spike proteins, it couldn't keep up. And then the 5th detoxifying organ is the skin. So not only do I want to build up those detoxifying organs, but I want to open up the detoxifying organs at a cellular level. For instance, when you do a DNA test, what we're finding in a lot of people, I personally have it, it's what's called a COMT mutation, a COMT. It's a gene, and when you have a variation in the COMT gene, what happens is when you consume green tea, quercetin, or turmeric or curcumin, it inhibits the body from breaking down estrogen, progesterone, and stress hormones. Well, a lot of women that come to me with breast cancer have an estrogen-dominant breast cancer. And when you have a COMT mutation, even though green tea is excellent for breast cancer, except for if you have a COMT mutation, then the very thing you're taking for breast cancer actually is a hindrance because it's inhibiting the body from breaking down estrogen. But I would never know that. People would never know that unless they tested. Because it's not about, I don't want to guess, I want to test. I want to look underneath the hood and see because what's right for you is different for me. Because it's not a one-size-fits-all. And Cancer is the one thing, unfortunately, on the planet that we just decide to throw in the mix and say every cancer is the same. Breast cancer, brain cancer, colon cancer, skin cancer, you name it, and we treat it with chemo and radiation. Yes, are there variations? Sure there are. But the reality is, every cancer is not the same. Every individual is not the same. And how we treat things, the more you personalize things, the better. Empower yourself with the information. People ask me, they said, Dr. Pete, because I get it all the time right now, they said, Dr. Pete, I don't have cancer, but how would I prevent it? I'm telling you how to prevent it. You have to heal the body at a cellular level. You have to open up the detoxification pathways. You have to add the sufficiency the body needs. And the only way, in my opinion, you can effectively do that is if you look underneath the hood. But the body is fearfully wonderfully made, is bought with a price. And then because cancer is metabolic, to flood the body with oxygen is one of the best things that you can do. And I talk about that in my protocol. I talk about hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I talk about high-dose vitamin C infusions. I talk about an ozone sauna. I have what's called a Hockett machine at our office, and it's an ozone sauna, infrared sauna, PEMF. I love PEMF baths. I talk about all of this in my protocol. I give you links as well, because I want to empower this generation to kick cancer to the curb. In fact, I'm writing a book with my good friend Jordan Rubin. It'll probably come out in 2026, called To Hell with Cancer. Because to hell with cancer. And my publisher has come to me in the last week and they said, would you write a book like Dodie Osteen did 30, 40 years ago, in just a mini book in healing cancer prayers? And so they want to put that in airports, and so we're just trying to negotiate a deal with them to really just go empower this generation to get healthy. I feel like God has given me a new spring to my step, so to speak. A new purpose. Will I continue to preach the gospel? Yes, I preach it. I'm preaching on Friday and Saturday in Zambia. I can't wait. But there's a whole generation of cancer patients that just don't have any hope. And to be their advocate would be the greatest privilege in the world. To let people know that there is hope. There are answers. I pray that my life inspires people, because people are desperate right now. And so I'm going to open it up for questions right now. Anyone have any questions?
Okay, I do.
Okay.
I have a question, because with like the HOCAT and the hyperbaric chamber and like the PEMF and infrared sauna and whole, like if you're someone that you don't have access to all those machines, or you know what I'm trying to say, and you're having to go to different med spas or whatever to get, what do you think are the most valuable? Or is the answer, it's a case-by-case basis? Do you know what I mean?
For me, personally, and I speak only from experience, for me, the most valuable thing I did, other than perspective. Okay, perspective is key. Casting down every false imagination that exalts itself against the Word of God, holding every thought captive, living in His perfect peace that passes understanding. There's a rest for the people of God when we live by faith, and He leads us beside still waters where there's rest for us. And so, if I'm burdened by a decision I'm about to make, by what the doctor says or whatever, my encouragement for everybody is do not take a step forward. Be still or take a step back. Make sure you have the peace of God and the perspective of heaven before you navigate forward into a dark, dark jungle trying to figure it out. And when I'm yoked by it, the spark that ignites faith in that rest is trust. How do I walk in trust? I acknowledge. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him. When I acknowledge God in the midst of the storm, okay, it's a spark that's going to ignite faith in my life. Lord, I don't feel you. I'm feeling overwhelmed, but I'm going to acknowledge, I know that you're here. I know you're never present help in a time of need. I know you never leave me nor forsake me. Even though it feels like you've forsaken me, I'm going to acknowledge you. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, we're not going to bow to you, King Nebuchadnezzar. God's going to take care of us. But if he doesn't, I'm still not going to bow to you, because we're going to at least acknowledge that God's in our midst. Then they go in the fiery furnace, and guess what happens? The fourth man, God shows up in the fire. I'm coming out of that fire, not burned at all. No residue of going through that fire. But guess what? My conviction now, I've entered into a different realm of faith, and now I'm fully convinced of truth and the reality of heaven in my life, and now I'm free. But it would never happen unless they first acknowledge God. So I heard this analogy that said, there's a missionary, and he had to get to the other side of a dark, dark jungle. And he only had a small little lantern. In fact, he could only see 1 foot in front of him. And someone said, well, how are you going to get there? He said, one step at a time. And that's trust. Just one step at a time. I'm just going to acknowledge, God, that you're in the midst of my life, regardless of what the doctor said, regardless of what the prognosis is, regardless of the fact that they said you have a 1% chance to be alive in 8 months. I'm going to simply acknowledge that you are for me, not against me. My God is so big, so strong, and so mighty. There's nothing my God cannot do. And that was what was in my spirit nonstop. And every time I felt yoked, I came boldly into his presence, and I said, Lord, my God is so big, so strong, and so mighty. There's nothing my God cannot do. And that simple childlike faith changed everything. But back to your question. So first, making sure you have perspective. The next thing I would say you need to test, I would do be resilient. From there, because be resilient allows me to personalize a plan for me that's different than everybody else. To say, okay, when it comes, if food is medicine and cancer does feed on sugar, then what foods are best for me? And what supplements, I'm not just going to do, because I had a patient that came to me from California, and she had a whole duffel bag of supplements. Probably spent $2,500 a month on supplements alone. Okay? Because every doctor she'd been to gave her a supplement that was good for cancer, and so she wanted to heal, but for 10 years she had breast cancer. Okay? With a huge bag. And we also found that she had a mutation. She said, Dr. Pete, she goes, I've had breast cancer for 10 years, and I've taken green tea every single day for 10 years without fail religiously because someone said it was good for breast cancer. And I'm in agreement it's good for breast cancer. She goes, I've been on quercetin every day since COVID hit. And I've been on curcumin as long as I can remember. And she said, just the information to come off of those things changed everything for me. And she said, what's also cool is that I was able to take all these supplements because I was being overloaded, clogging my detoxification pathways, clogging the mitochondria. And now she goes, I have 13 capsules I take every single day. I take 6, 7 at my first meal and 6 at my second meal, and that's all I take. She goes, it's amazing. And now her detoxification pathways are open, her digestive system is now working, it's been healed. Her liver, her kidneys are no longer overwhelmed. Her lungs are great. She has her energy back. Her hormones are balanced. All because we were able to personalize it for her. And then I said after that, for me, I would get a PEMF mat. A PEMF mat you can get I have them in my protocol. A PEMF mat is something you just lie on, or you put it over you, and it's a pulse electromagnetic frequency. And it will basically, it's like a battery charger to your cells. And so it just actually increases circulation, improves detoxification. And then I would do a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. Hyperbaric for us at my office, I sell an hour for I think $100 to $125. I know in California right now, an hour session costs $300. I don't know what it is here. I would say I would just buy one. The one that I have is $10,000. You can be in it every single day. My son can give you, Eli, raise your hand. So that's my son, Eli. He can give you information on the one that we use. I have what's called the Dive. We can give you, if we purchase it, I can actually pass that price on to you guys and allow you to get the 10% discount that I personally get if it's something you're interested in. But I would say if you start adding up those sessions, because I would like to do it for 60 to 90 minutes a day so we can flood the body with oxygen. So I would say perspective, be resilient, PEMF, in hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Can you do high-dose vitamin C and things like that? Absolutely, I think they're beneficial. I think you can do ozone, I think you can do photodynamic, there's a lot of things you can do, but I think the biggest thing is personalizing it to make sure, bar none, I'm gonna lay a foundation that making sure I'm putting the right fuel in my body, because I'm gonna pay attention. I'm eating to live now. I used to live to eat, now I'm eating to live. And I'm gonna make sure that the foods that I put in my body are right. I'm gonna make sure that my nutrients are perfect, rather than just giving you multivitamins saying, oh, hey, you're great in vitamin D at a cellular level, but magnesium is deficient. So let's get, because if you do conventional treatment, chemoradiation, one of the things that you'll find is that it really depletes minerals and the vitamins and nutrients. And so we just want to support those. I'm not telling you don't do those things. I'm telling you do those things, chemo and radiation, if that's the course of action that you're choosing, but make sure that you're supporting the body, okay? Supporting the body at the cellular level will be the best thing that you can do. I really believe that. Unfortunately, I have two friends of mine that are going through leukemia, and the first meal from one of my friends, in receiving, hooked up to chemo, this first meal in the hospital, in the cancer unit at the hospital, was a pizza, a milkshake, a Diet Coke, and a cookie. And we laugh at that because we think, no way is that possible. That's all they do, because in what their response is, you're losing too much weight, we need to give you calories. One of the best things you could do would be to actually fast. To create autophagy so we can remove all those damaged cells from the body and expel them from the body. And I would say the other thing I would do would be coffee enemas. Coffee enemas, I used to make fun of my wife for doing them 3 times a week, or 3 times a month, I should say, and now I do them 3 times a day. Unapologetically, unashamedly, I love my coffee enemas. I love shooting coffee in my butt because I want to live. And it's one of the greatest ways to detoxify the liver and the kidneys.
Is there a particular type?
Yeah.
Not fruity coffee. Yeah. I would do, there's a place on my protocol called the Happy Bum Company, because your bum is happy. It's from Australia, there's a link in there, but you can also go to Walgreens or CVS and get like a $15 red enema, what's called a douchebag, and it's going to cost $50. Get an organic coffee that has caffeine in it. You need the caffeine because we want to go in and really release the bile and free up the liver and the kidneys. And then you want to hold it in. At first few times, you just want to hold it in for as long as you can, but then you want to get up to about 12 or 15 minutes, because every 3 minutes it will actually give you a natural dialysis through the liver and the kidneys, which is very, very powerful. It'll actually is proven to expel even tumors and circulating tumor growth. I think too, like a high dose vitamin C is a natural chemotherapy. It actually turns into a hydrogen peroxide in the body. But I think you have to but my encouragement is doing it at a therapeutic dose, and so they'll do it based on your weight. For me, at 100 grams, I do 100 grams every single week of high dose vitamin C, and it takes me about 4 hours set up, so I actually do consults while I'm set up to the IV. But it's like a natural hydrogen peroxide in the body, and it's actually proven to clear out, because most chemo actually is proven not to affect cancer stem cells or circulating tumors. And so even if they say, hey, we got it all, it's the cancer stem cells that we're after. And so diet is so important for that, because diet is actually one of the best ways that we can do it. In fact, Dr. William Lee, I think is his name, from Harvard, he actually said there's now 200 proven angiogenesis inhibiting foods on the planet. What's angiogenesis? Angiogenesis is blood forming. So tumors need blood supply, they need sugar. Okay, so angiogenesis is what inhibits, so angiogenesis inhibiting is cutting off the blood source to the tumor. And there's 200 foods proven to be angiogenesis blood inhibiting foods. Okay, well, what's even better than that is that when I can look underneath the hood and do a food sensitivity test and determine, wow, these foods my body does bad with, but these foods it does very, very good. It's very good for my body, making sure the angiogenesis inhibiting foods that I'm consuming are actually right for my biochemistry and my biology. Any other questions at all? Yes, ma'am.
So, I feel like my grandparents' generation, they didn't have any of these tools, but my grandparents, on both maternal and paternal side, they're in their 90s, 97, 94, 96. And I just feel like, you know, their generation compared to my parents' generation, they fared so much better in terms of health, and they didn't do any supplements and things like that. But I do think that they ate a lot more plants, a variety of plants.
Yeah.
So my thought was, you know, for cancer to survive, it has to be in an acidic environment,
Yeah.
right? And so if we're alkalizing our bodies with alkaline water and with lots of different vegetables and juicing, like versus therapy,
Yeah.
perhaps could be really beneficial without having to know, like, personally, like, individual sensitivities,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're just wanting to be healthy in general, like, could we just start there?
Yeah, I think that's great wisdom. I think the biggest thing though is because our diets are so depleted, because most people do not have healthy guts, detoxification pathways that are open, and then what they are consuming isn't good for them. And so if in an ideal world where I got activity, where I got sunlight, where I did grounding every day, where I was eating whole fruits and vegetables, where I was getting the antioxidants, where I was eating clean proteins and grass-fed and grass-finished beef and wild-caught salmon and organic eggs, absolutely, by all means, go for it. Unfortunately, we live in America, which is the worst standardized country in the world when it comes to our soils depleted. We have pharmaceuticals, even in our shower, you know, that's filtered in, even if I'm not on a pharmaceutical drug, it's in our environment. And so purifying your water, I love hydrogen water. I think, you know, when it comes to hydrating the body, I think that's something that you can very much do. And ideally, absolutely. And I think because that's why our ancestors did so well. People ask me, they said, Dr. B, you eat clean. Like, how did you diagnose with a terminal brain cancer? Was it parasites? I've been around the world 25 times. But when I talked to the oncologists about, hey, could it be parasites? They laughed at me. They said, no, cancer has nothing to do with parasites. Look at the research. It absolutely does. It actually, cancer actually will compound this. So there's a lot of work from Dr. Mackey, from different people when it comes to ivermectin and things like that. Now, are there a lot of natural antiparasitics? Absolutely. Wormwood, black walnut, pumpkin seeds, all great things. But I want to make so, from an experience of someone who's had cancer, making cancer cells vulnerable is key. And so how do we do that? Fasting. That's the fasting, you know, intermittent fasting, eating in a shorter window is great. A 1-day water fast, a 3-day water fast. I know someone that just did with cancer a 40-day water fast. I wouldn't recommend that unless you literally have someone walking with you, measuring your labs and everything else. But the body is fearfully wonderfully made. It was created to work. And so I believe God designed not to have to do supplements and all these things, but also it's how do I steward over the lifestyle that we have in America, which is very different than what you find in a lot of third world countries, unfortunately, are a lot healthier than we are, because they just have even good, healthy bacteria in dirt that's actually very beneficial for you. Any other questions at all? Yes, ma'am.
Does age have anything to do with how quickly a person responds to the program that you have?
Yeah, you know, I think there's, when you look at aging and telomeres, what are called, and so telomeres are like the ends of the DNA that when they replicate, they fall off. And so when telomeres short, so the faster the telomeres fall off, the faster you age. And we can actually slow down the aging by doing this. And so my thing is if you're 90 or 7, you know, we can all benefit from good nutrition that's good for us. So I have a 7-year-old, unfortunately, that I'm working with right now with brain cancer who has a shunt in his head. A 7-year-old. And so we're just saying, okay, how do we support this body? And we're seeing amazing changes even already with this physiology. And that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to build up the terrain and slow down the aging process. And so I think the more, and where medicine is going is everyone's gonna want it personalized, because that's where I get the best results. Yes, ma'am.
The 8-month comprehensive functional medicine program, after 8 months, what you've learned in 8 months, you carry it on the 9th month going forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's ideal, and so that's why we set you up with a nutritionist. We find that when you go after it alone, it's too overwhelming, and so when you have a nutritionist assigned to you, it helps you navigate that journey. We give you all the resources that you need for essential oils and everything else, but when the 8 to 9 months is done, what we suggest is probably at a year. So we would suggest, if it's working and then you want the compounded supplements, that we would basically encourage you to order 3 more months of it, okay, if it's working. And what we charge now for compounded tailor-made supplements is $230 a month, okay? We used to charge 3 times that, but what we found is that no one, once you tasted of compounded tailor-made supplements, no one wants to go back to over-the-counter anymore. So we made that very, and then what we suggest at a year of doing a micronutrient analysis, again, to see the nutrient deficiencies. And we charge $300 for the micronutrient test. We basically give it to you for our cost, and that will allow us to reformulate your supplements moving forward. So the food sensitivities, we don't actually do that test again unless you really want it, because we believe that if we can heal your gut, balance your hormones, open up the detoxification pathways, we want to actually reincorporate those foods, because we want you to enjoy life and not be limited on your foods. And so that's kind of how we approach it.
But if you're already on supplements for older age, hormones, do you recommend getting off all that stuff for a period of time before you do your testing?
No, but what I recommend is that if you do the program, Ainsley, my daughter-in-law, will onboard you and set up the lab kits and the phlebotomist and everything else, and you can respond back to her with a list of everything you're doing, and she'll pass it on to me, and I'll help give you a transition for the supplements you are on, when to take them, so we can transition you into the compounded supplements. And so we want to make sure that we can support you in that process. Yes, ma'am.
With respect to electromagnetic stress or electromagnetic frequency, how does that affect cancer in our bodies?
Very much so.
Can you repeat the question?
So it's basically, how does electromagnetic frequency affect cancer? And was that pretty accurate? I think, the vibration of cells and frequency and ionizing radiation and all that stuff is a huge contributor. How much of a contributor? I think it's way more than people think. I think some of the last meeting we had said, what about wireless headphones? I would make sure you're only using cords in your headphones, because if you look at and see that with the EMF radiation or whatever it is of wireless, it's light you up. And so they said, well, did I get brain cancer because of ionizing radiation? Did I get it because of parasites? I don't know. I think it was just an assignment from the enemy trying to keep me from preaching the gospel around the world. And I believe the enemy played his cards wrong with me, and the Lord was punking the devil with my life. And so that's honestly what I believe. And honestly, I would say I am more grateful for this diagnosis than almost anything in my life, because it established, because what the enemy used for harm was at the risk of establishing me further, and I have a greater conviction in my life. And right now, every day is a gift for me. And if God gives me tomorrow, then I'm going to tell as many people as I can about Him, empower as many people as I can. If He gives me next year, and I'm asking the Lord for 50 more years to just go empower this generation to get healthy.
It puts you 100% in your calling.
What's that?
It got you 100% in your calling. Second question: Does a teaspoon of soda balance the alkalinity in your body?
A baking soda. I'm not against baking soda. There's a lot of things you can do to alkalize the body.
What else can you do?
There's a lot of things I talk about in my protocol when it comes to how do you alkalize the body. I think hydrogen water is great. I think antioxidants. I think there's alkalizing foods and acidic foods, and so balancing those out. I think the biggest thing for me is just looking underneath the hood and making sure that for you, if you're in a position to, because not everyone's in a position to, but if you can, making sure you can personalize everything so we can build the body back up. And the biggest reason we take away foods is because we want to begin to build the body back up so that we can reintroduce those foods again. Any other questions at all? Yes.
So how does this apply differently to Parkinson's? Because it's very different.
Yes. The question was, how does this apply compared to, say, someone with Parkinson's? Personally, with the patients that I've seen that have Parkinson's that come to me with Alzheimer's, dementia, that even have bipolar schizophrenia, which are a lot different than Parkinson's and so forth, I think I would approach it the same way. I would look underneath the hood, and because that's what I did for 23 years. I had Parkinson's patients and Alzheimer's patients and dementia and MS and Epstein-Barr and everything else come to me, and Lyme's patients, and I treated them. And once, when I did this program for my wife, the results we got, because we weren't guessing anymore. And so that's how I would approach it. I would make sure I can get all the information and support the body to cellular level so that the cells can detoxify themselves effectively and really restore fluidity of the cell membrane. So I'd actually probably approach it the same, because it's so different, because everyone's unique, but I'd approach it with this program. That's kind of the foundation that I would lead. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What results have you seen with Crohn's disease?
With what?
Crohn's disease?
Actually, I have a patient, she now works for me, she's 17. When she came to me, I think at 16, they wanted to give her a colostomy bag. She was a soccer player, high school soccer player, beautiful girl, and she was just distraught, and basically, to be honest with you, didn't know what she was going to do, because she couldn't even imagine being a colostomy bag. And so they came to me, last ditch effort. They just said, is there anything that you can do for us? And we put her on this Be Resilient program. This was before I was diagnosed. Put her on this Be Resilient program, and not only does she not need a colostomy bag, but her digestive system has really actually been reformed, and she has new gut flora, and she's a beautiful girl who's living a normal life. And actually we were able to reintroduce foods to her, and she's able to eat foods that she never ate before, and she's completely in remission. Yeah. And so that was one of but MS and Parkinson's, I have a patient who came to me like 13 years ago. This is even before I knew any better, but she came to me in a wheelchair with Parkinson's, and now she actually writes for me, and she's completely healthy, and she's one of our health coaches. And so really cool to see. Let me tell you this before we get going. I'm going to answer some more questions still, but and please know this: if you decide that this is what God has called you to do, to take this next step with Be Resilient, great. I would be honored to walk with you, and I will walk with you personally. Okay. But please know there's zero pressure to do any of that. In fact, I wouldn't do it unless you have complete peace that passes all understanding. It doesn't affect me one bit. My biggest thing right now is, how do we empower people to get healthy and meet them where they're at? And so, but if you decide to do it because you're here at Frank and Julie's house tonight, we are offering, so you'll see the prices if you pay it up front, $12,997 for the 8-month program. If you pay it up front because you're here, we're going to add, we'll give you a promo code, offer 1,000, and I'll let you write that down. It'll give you an extra $1,000 off that program if you do it within the next week. You don't have to do it, please know this. It doesn't bother me if you don't do it, but if you do it just to honor the fact that we're here, you'll get an extra $1,000 off that program. If you use coupon code offer 1,000, OFFER 1,000, we give off the top to the gospel, and that's really what we do. And so it's our offering to the Lord, and we talked about that last night at the Matthew 10, is all of our entities we really believe are used to fund the gospel. And that's really why we live our life right now, is to empower as many people as we can and then fund the gospel. We give the proceeds to the gospel. So Any other questions at all? Yes?
What are your thoughts on colostrum, which is so popular right now, that's supposed to be beneficial for the microbiome?
Yeah, I think I like colostrum. You know, I use Omra right now. I have it in my protocol. I think it's good. You know, do I think it's the end all be all? No. I think it's good. It's like a probiotic, in my opinion. I think colostrum, for a baby, that gets it from their mother, I think is one of the best things you can possibly take, because it's specific for that DNA.
I've been using Armor 2 for 6 months or something, and I haven't really noticed a difference, so I just wondered if it was...
Yeah, and I think too, I love colostrum for the antioxidant benefits and so forth, but, I think there's other things that you can do, and I have that listed because of the benefits, but I don't use it all the time anymore. But they're great marketers for sure.
Yeah.
Any other questions at all? Yes, sir.
You've mentioned a couple of times about the parasites, and of course, it's all over social media now. So do you recommend, like, just periodically, like, and with ivermectin and what?
Benzone.
Yeah, like to take that like once a month, or just go out in the sun for 20 minutes a day.
I would say the sun, 15 minutes on either side, getting exposure in the sun, grounding.
Without sunscreen.
Yeah, without sunscreen. I think those are one of the best things that you can possibly do, hydrating.
Yeah.
I think pumpkin seeds are one of the greatest things. And at Costco, you can get sprouted pumpkin seeds, sea salt pumpkin seeds, which are incredible antiparasitic. Again, they taste good and they're rich in healthy fats, and especially since I want to stay in ketosis. And my biggest thing is, so I'm on a very strict ketogenic diet. I have a ketone monitor to just check my ketone scores, and I want to keep it between like a 3 and a 4. But I have information on that. I have a diet that we can encourage, but even that, is a ketogenic diet good for brain cancer? Yes, I believe the research proves it. I think Thomas Seyfried, Otto Warburg are great. They've brought a ton of information, but I believe every cancer deserves a different diet. And so it's not a one size fits all. It's one size fits you and one size fits you. And so, and for me, that's been a game changer for me personally. Any other? Yes, sir.
Do you work with anybody or patients that have epilepsy or going through?
Yeah, absolutely. Quite a few actually. I think it's just. I've worked with a lot of people with epilepsy with seizures. Children who had grand mal seizures through chiropractic or specific spinal, adjustments, as well as diet, that have been very, very well. But I think a little bit of different patients with like Alzheimer's and dementia. In fact, there's a guy named Dr. David Perlmutter, who's a board-certified neurologist, that's written some books, but his research actually validated that Alzheimer's is the most reversible disease on the planet. And he said it's in like 60% of people, like 50% of people over 65 get diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And it's a crazy statistic, but he will actually say it's personalized nutrition. He said when your diet is weak and more permeable, so it means that it's not as tight, even good foods can get up in the bloodstream, and if they circulate, they can cross the blood-brain barrier, and basically they'll say Alzheimer's and dementia is brain toxicity. If you look at Parkinson's, brain toxicity. If you look at epilepsy, brain toxicity. And so anything you can do to open up those detoxification pathways, get the nutrients that the body needs, support the body, its mitochondria, you can actually reverse. I believe you can reverse aging. If they can reverse, if stage 4 brain cancer, then anything can be reversed. And anyone that tells you differently, I wouldn't listen to them. I'd go find someone else.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
What about Lewy body? Is that, it's a form of brain
Yeah.
situation?
And so I think if you look at anything from Alzheimer's to dementia to Parkinson's to brain cancer to astrocytoma to glioblastoma to gliomas to, I think I would approach the body. So this is interesting. So Jordan Rubin, years and years ago, when we first became friends, I would I wasn't into nutrition at the time. In fact, I knew nothing about nutrition. I had the largest chiropractic clinic in the world at the time, but knew nothing about true health. And I was introduced to Jordan Rubin and became fast friends. And I started calling him every time I had a different condition of my patients. I said, okay, well, what about Crohn's disease? What about Alzheimer's? What about MS? What about hypothyroidism? And so one time I said, okay, so he told me about hypothyroidism, how to approach hypothyroidism. So, and then I said, okay, what about hyperthyroidism? And he goes, do you know that you ask me for different things, but I respond with the exact same protocol for every single one? But for me, I categorize every single one as a different disease process. And so my big thing is, how do we approach it? And then he said, you approach them all the same way, and if you approach them the right way, all of them heal. But it's a personalized approach. And that's why with this program, that's what we found. Like, I don't care if you have Alzheimer's, dementia, hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, I don't care if you have Cushing's disease, I don't care what you have to look underneath the hood and find out what does your body specifically need, and make sure that we can begin to build back the terrain so that the body can do what it was created to do. And I believe then we need to open up those detoxification pathways, add the sufficiency the body needs, and watch what God does. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So speaking of like being a younger brother and loving hand-me-downs all my life, because I know they're good, hand-down. Trying to set up the house, like the basic fundamentals, like water, like shower, air, all this stuff you need in your environment. It's easy to go on Amazon and get lost.
Yeah.
And I've been drawn and like called to like kind of find some stuff for myself. I'm not sure if do you happen to have like your own special things that we can like get through you?
Yeah. So if you look at just my protocol, that's free, my resilience protocol. I think you even have it. I saw your mom has it. I have air filters, water filters, hydrogen machines, all that in there. But I would gladly just reach out to me. I would gladly help you navigate that. And I'm putting together a toxic in our portal for Be Resilient, what we give you access to. I have everything from toxic-free living to essential oils to everything in purifying your environment, because that's where most of the stress comes from that affects us internally. But I'll get that all the information. But great question. Yes, please.
Is there a quick way to detox the mold?
You heal the gut and understand what your DNA mutations are, and make sure you have the sufficiency that your body needs and pulls it to. Because everyone's exposed to mold. Everyone's exposed to, truthfully, Lyme's disease and heavy metals, but not everyone responds the same way. So those that have a built-up terrain, see, what I'm after is I want to build the body up in such a way that I can move forward and never look back and never worry about cancer coming back. I think because that's what people are doing. They're looking over their shoulders and just waiting for cancer to come back. And I don't think you have to live that way. I think if you can build up the body will do very, very well. Guys, thank you so much. It's been an honor to be with you. If you have any questions, we'll stick around.